When the Canucks miss the playoffs again.
When Jim Benning trades away all our picks.
When Goldalden is scratched for the third game in a row. C4 is there. With Sedin-like vision, Horvat's work ethic, and Petey's electric personality. Here comes the C4 Canucks Hockey Podcast with Chris, Matt, Anna, and Adam.
Powered by Overtime Media.
Matt and Anna in the house for the C4 Podcast, brought to you from the Vivid Seats studio in downtown Vancouver. We are 10 games into the Vancouver Canucks regular season, Anna, so what are some of the early takeaways? We'll get into that on today's show. And are the playoffs still a realistic discussion? Anna, how are you?
I'm doing okay. Just about recovered from Friday night.
What was Friday night?
The game, not my random
Which
adventure.
part of the game, though?
The heartbreak.
The highs, the lows?
Both. All of the above. Of course, there was lots of lows. But the great thing about Friday's game was not just the 5 goals. It was also, I got to meet some of our lovely listeners.
That's right, and a special shout out to Neil, who's one of our friends and patrons here on Discord. You can find him at Scoops187. I'd love to. I think I remember why he changed his handle from Nexus187 to Scoops187.
I don't think it was him. I think that might have been Chris's.
Chris did it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty funny.
He's the only one that understands how Discord works.
So you met Neil at the game, before the game, I should say.
Great.
Lovely guy from everything we've also, I've only known him through digital, and I think one time we played Fortnite together as well.
Nice.
But I'm sure that was quite a treat for you.
Yeah, it was great. Well, we also had another listener, Hinton, who came in from the UK.
Mm-hmm.
So we all kind of mixed together. We were at the sports bar before the game. It was crazy busy, but had a good time. It was just really cool to meet both of them and interact in real life.
Yeah, and I know we've interacted with quite a few of our listeners who have been to a Canucks game that you and I have been sort of both been at in the past. So it is always great to meet our listeners in person when our schedules allow and everything. So for anyone who is coming into Vancouver or has plans to come into Vancouver, drop us a line in Discord. We'll try and meet up with you guys because it is always great to meet fellow Canucks fans, especially those who are not necessarily from Vancouver as well.
Yeah, no, it's really cool. Especially Hinton was coming in from the UK and Nexus from northern BC, so it was just pretty far away for both of them to come in. So yeah, it's a rare occasion, and it was really nice to meet both of them.
Chris Golden at Light Force, he is away. He's doing something in Singapore or something. I didn't catch the memo.
Teaching someone from Singapore, not actually going to Singapore.
Okay, I just skimmed the message, to be honest.
That's exciting. Yeah, sorry.
Adam Ovanel Carter at Adam FOC at Steamworks. Say hello. Get the Wednesday special. It's the key themes there.
Yeah, he's either working or Matt has murdered him. Send in your conspiracy
Yes, we have heard some false conjecture, by the way, that somehow Adam and I are one human and that I am a shapeshifter of some sorts.
Yeah, well, prove us wrong, Matt.
I'm the most positive person on this podcast, and you all missed me on this podcast last week when I was not here.
Oh, yeah, that's true. I forgot that it's sunny, positive Matt now.
I'm very positive, actually. And, had it not been for the Friday night massacre that we saw in the third period, I would have come in here thinking that this was a legit Stanley Cup contender.
Yeah, but then the third period happened.
And restored all balance in life, as it is for Canucks fans. We'll talk about that Washington game, Anna, which you were, again, live and attending in person. We'll talk about a little bit of tonight's game, the Vancouver Canucks playing the Florida Panthers. So, of course, not a lot of analysis from the Monday night contest to take away from this one. And we'll take 5 takeaways. It's a trick-or-treat edition.
Ooh, spooky.
For half full, half empty. All coming up next on the C4 Podcast on CanucksHockeyBlog.com.
So before we get into discussing Friday night game and all that happened there, I just want to tell you guys a new thing that I've just discovered, and that's our friends at MyBookie. So luckily I didn't go on there for the Friday game because I think I would have been too optimistic, but any other game, I'll go on and you can put your bets on. Don't just do hockey. Like, I'm looking at the hockey, I'm looking at the soccer, as you guys would call it. But they do NFL, which I don't get into, but they do NFL, they do NBA. So that's kind of your average sports betting site. But what I like about it is the fact that it's not just like point spreads and all that kind of basic stuff. They always do stuff to do with players as well. So it's kind of like, how many yards will this guy make his next part, or how many points will this player put up in the next game? So that's what makes it a little bit different and cool. But what makes it different for you guys too is that you can get an added bonus with it. So if you enter the offer code overtime, they'll match whatever deposit you put in for your first deposit. So that's kind of cool offer. So just go on over to mybookie.ag, that's .ag, and then you enter overtime, and then whatever you deposit, they'll match it. So yeah, check them out. Check out their hockey bets, but also look into other sports if you are lame and like the NFL.
If that tickles your fancy. If you were to say
good
something.
vocab, Matt, for once.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Anna. Let's talk about that Friday game that you attended in person. Really a tale of two games, if you will.
Yeah, tale of 3 periods, but
so let's
2 games.
Let's start with the positives, because I'm a naturally positive person. Those first 2 periods that we saw, Jake Virtanen, Tim Schaller, Brock Besser,
man.
There were goals galore happening in those first 2 periods from the Vancouver Canucks. They were doing it both on the power play and on special teams. They looked like they were controlling the pace at 5-on-5 as well. It looked like this team was ready to really take that step forward in towards being a playoff contender. How would you first characterize that first half of hockey that we saw from the Vancouver Canucks? It looked very promising.
Yeah, it was dominant. I think the fact that there was scoring up and down the lineup, I mean, Tim Schaller getting goals, Oprah clearly handing out goals.
Can only hope to stop Shalatov, as they call him.
Yeah. But also they just weren't letting Washington push them around physically. So without being ill-disciplined, as we've seen them get in the past, with like tougher teams, they just kind of smartly showed who's boss kind of thing. So yeah, dominant in all senses of the lineup, like up and down, attacking, defending. Yeah, physically.
I mean, it was really refreshing, I think, to see, because their goaltending was holding up very well in those first 2 periods as well. Like, Markstrom really had carried the momentum of that road trip into Vancouver for the start of that game against Washington. They were throwing, I mean, Evgeny Kuznetsov opens the scoring for the Washington Capitals, and you think, well, here comes the 2018 Stanley Cup champions giving the Vancouver Canucks a run for their money. But then Markstrom really started to stand tall after that. The Canucks weathered some early onslaughts from the Washington Capitals. They get the power play. Quinn Hughes is carrying the puck all the way into the Washington end to set up Brock Besser for that awesome goal. This looked like, I think it would put Chris Golden, like, it would bring him pride knowing that this was high-octane offense that we were seeing from the Vancouver Canucks for what seemed like quite a long stretch of that period.
Yeah. And I know we're about to get into in detail the Washington comeback, but I guess that's the kind of hockey Chris likes, the high-risk kind of hockey, where it's goals against but lots of goals for. So even from a neutral perspective, I guess you could say that's pretty entertaining hockey, like however you slice it.
And, you know, for all the good that we saw happen in that comeback win over the Detroit Red Wings to end off that road trip, Anna, it seemed like the polar opposite on Friday night against the Capitals in that third period, because they go in 5-2 lead, I think, going into the third period, and the team just comes unglued in that first half of the third. Travis Green calls a timeout. First of all, do you think that he should have called the timeout early?
Yeah. Hell yeah, he should. We were yelling at him the whole game, the whole third period there to call a timeout, I think. So it seemed a bit like day late, dollar short type thing. But like really, we don't know whether it would have made a difference, because it seemed like the whole team, as you said, became unglued there, kind of checked out of the game.
Mm-hmm. Is it natural, though, for a team that's up 5-2 going into a third period to sort of sit back a little bit? I think, like, for anyone who's sort of played organized hockey in the past and that has a lead like that, like I've played beer league hockey all the time, and I'm not obviously saying beer league hockey is the same as NHL hockey, but when you have what you would call a comfortable lead like that, it is very human nature to sit back, try to grind out the clock, try to wear down your opponents by clogging up the defensive zone.
But almost every other team in the NHL, like the Canucks are the worst with leads.
Yes.
They, I can't remember the exact stats. I'm going to try and pull them up here. But basically, they're finding it hard to dominate when they're ahead. Like, there's one thing of sitting back and letting them come to you. Sure, that's like one way to play, but the Canucks are just really struggling with generating any offense, like when they're trying to hold a lead, generating any shots really at all, and they just keep coming up with all the shots against. So while it is normal to like slow your roll a bit with a lead, the Canucks are the worst at doing it.
It does go without saying, and I don't want to, isolate the Canucks as this lone case of a team that would blow such a lead. Like, I think it was Ben Kuzma of the Province who noted in his recap that the Vancouver Canucks are not the only team to have surrendered multi-goal leads in the third period. I think the Columbus Blue Jackets had a 4-2 lead and lost 7-4 in a game or something like that. There have been apparently 10 multi-goal comebacks for teams so far just this season. Right. Which shows you, I guess, number one, that teams are never really out of games, even if they're down 2 or 3 goals going into the third period. And number two, maybe a bit of a wake-up call for the Vancouver Canucks. Maybe that, that tough reminder, if you will, that you can never really sit back in an NHL game. I mean, it seems like the Canucks and most NHL teams, for that matter, have that rude awakening at least once every year that this is a tough league to sort of sit back and nurse a multi-goal lead, and no matter what.
Yeah, I mean, you're right, and as we say, from a neutral perspective, it's great that like the NHL is like building and building in terms of entertainment value and goals scored, because those are great storylines when it's multi-goal comebacks. But yeah, for the Canucks themselves, it's not a good look. I did just pull up the stat that Daryl Keeping tweeted out.
Yeah, just saw that there from Bearded Canuck 03, who's following along in Patreon chat as well.
So they have, the Canucks, this is under green, by the way, whilst they're leading, they have the 4th worst shot share, that's hard to say, of the entire league, worst expected goals, and the 2nd worst scoring chance percentage.
So TLDR, when they're in the lead, the optics are not good for them, or the metrics, if you will, are not good for them.
Right. So it's not just that, like, you'd expect the offense to slow down whilst they're already in the lead. Sure, that makes sense. But like the fact that the expected goals and the scoring chances are so low is just like, that is worrying. So
here's the thing that I want to say, and maybe the biggest takeaway from this Washington game. I think, once again, this is a very tough lesson, and I think this is a valuable lesson for the younger players on this team, because there are a lot of them, of course, Hannah. It's that you need to find a killer instinct in these games, because those third period leads, they can evaporate like that. And for a young team as they are, like Pettersson, Besser, Horvat, like we've talked about, those kind of young guns that are leading this team, they need to learn that lesson real quick in this league, or they're going to find a way to leave more than just that 1 point that they left on the table in Washington. Right,
because it's funny that we're talking about the offense here when they like gave up 4 goals straight. Mm-hmm. But really, when you look at things, like Markstrom didn't have the best game. I think he'd be the first to say that. I think he was the first to say that. He was pretty frustrated. Post-game, he broke his own stick there at the end of regulation.
I saw that.
Yeah.
Took him a second effort, but whatever. The point was taken.
But the point is that, like, Markstrom has stood on his head to keep the Canucks in games, and he did that against the Rangers, stole that win for them there, but for the first time, he let in a couple of soft goals. So, all in all, I think it's hard to completely blame the defense on this one, and what we should really be concentrating on is the fact that like they couldn't find another goal in that, they just were facing an onslaught.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Yeah. And a segue from that Jacob Markstrom talk, we see Thatcher Demko starting for the Vancouver Canucks tonight against the Florida Panthers. What do you make out of that, if anything?
I don't think there's much to make out of that, because I do think Green still has a lot of faith in Markstrom. this is the first time we've seen Demko's like not getting an enforced start. You know, it's not a back-to-back, and it's not because Markstrom's away. This is like a chosen start, I guess. And if we're looking at the whole season, we want to get him a few more of those as we transition into like him taking over as the goalie. So I still think Marky is the guy. I still think he's Green's guy, and I wouldn't be too worried about him like having another performance issue in the future.
I don't disagree with it, and of course if it was in Vancouver we wouldn't be even discussing the idea of some sort of goaltending controversy, Anna. Also the fallout from that game on Friday, Tyler Mott banged up, looking like he'll miss another 1 week or two. In the meantime, Adam Gaudette's stay in Utica was very brief. He was recalled earlier on the weekend. Doesn't look like he's playing tonight on Monday night, though. It's Louis Eriksson who draws back in to take in that fourth-line winger spot that Tyler Mott was occupying. What do you make out of this decision from Travis Green to use Louis Eriksson and to have Adam Gaudette staying as the 13th forward / press box popcorn eater?
Yeah, I think it's kind of unfortunate because obviously the whole reason he was sent down is that he wasn't getting the starts, so...
Ripped it up in Utica, by the way, over the weekend.
Totally did, but at the same time, they had a back-to-back, did they not? And that second game, the Hershey game, was a real tough one. Hung on there to win 2-1. DiPietro had a great game. Interesting.
Yep.
But I think it's mainly just fatigue that they're worried about. So... I'm not actually reading into it that, like, I think Adam Gaudette would start, all things being equal. Mm-hmm. But it is unfortunate because you want to see him playing, and whether that's in Utica or in Vancouver, he needs to be playing.
New year, new Matt. I don't have a problem with Louis Eriksson playing in this one.
Yeah, see,
I mean, if this was a, like, second-line winger hole that was opening up, I would probably say, what's the point of playing Louis Eriksson? We know that's a role he has been... tried in and was unsuccessful in, but at a fourth line winger role, you're asking Louis Eriksson to play maybe 10 minutes at most on the evening. I do think, as opposed to just letting Louis Eriksson just rot away in the press box for the rest of the season and perhaps the rest of his contract, you have very little downside in terms of actually just giving him a shot. I'm not saying that Louis Eriksson doesn't deserve the many chances he's already had. But at this point, he's fresh. He's ready to go. Adam Gaudette, you mentioned, has traveled back and forth from Utica, has played a lot over the last 3 or 5 days. It is time, I think, to give Louis Eriksson at least a shot this evening against the Florida Panthers. I won't be surprised, however, if it's Adam Gaudette playing in the next one.
Sure. I guess for me, it just depends on Mott's injury. Like, if this is going to be a longer spell recall, then absolutely fine. Like, as we said, he's fatigued. I'm fine for Louis to play. I don't want... If it's a short form, like, recall, I would have rather had someone else be recalled, I guess. If it's just
like McEwen or something like that?
If it's just an insurance recall. Sure. But obviously, I hope Mott is okay. But at the same time, it would be great if this is a longer recall that he can... like, play in the lineup.
I would love, like, don't get me wrong, I would love to see Louis Eriksson find a way to be an everyday NHL player once again. I would actually genuinely love to find a way for him to be effective. The problem is he hasn't been. And am I saying he deserves a chance? No, not necessarily. However, I think he deserves a chance to try and get back in the lineup. Like, the Canucks do need to see what they have, and let's face it, you got to up his trade value somehow. You can't up his trade value by having him be in the press box.
Right, that's the thing. And obviously, I think we're kind of past the point. I think this last camp was like the last... I think we're past the point of no return with Louis and the Canucks in terms of actually coming back as a long-term player. But that's not to say that he doesn't deserve a chance to play every now and again. And as you say... let's try and find another route out of here. And if he has a hell of a few games, like, great. Maybe a team will be interested in taking on that contract.
All right, Anna. I know you went to the game on Friday.
I did.
It was a great game, for the most part.
Yeah, for the most part.
That must have been a hot ticket. But speaking of hot tickets, let me tell you a little something about Vivid Seats. Using the Vivid Seats app, You can find seats by price, by row, anything you need when looking for tickets to the next big Canucks game. It is the place to go if you're looking to, say, get tickets to the Sedin retirement night, or maybe Alex Burrows' Ring of Honor game. And when it's time to buy, new users enter the promo code OVERTIME at checkout to receive a discount of up to $100. Cannot believe that. Gonna take a break. When we come back, the trick-or-treat edition of Half Full, Half Empty. Are we getting the trick or are we getting the treat? All coming up next. C4 Podcast, CanucksHockeyBlog.com.
Take hitting out of the game. You can't hit anymore, so don't do it.
The unsportsmanlike conduct, I want to get an explanation on.
No kidding.
Because how do you get suspended for unsportsmanlike conduct?
Plus interference. There's no interference there. He had the puck.
Now, Madison never ever did that before. Now, why did he do it? And that because he was mad.
Well, your early favorite for the Calder Trophy, that's for sure. Elias Pettersson, you might even say your early favorite for the Hart Trophy.
Just to get back to your question, Elias is going to play plenty. He didn't play. He's going to get a lot of power play time. And, yeah, I'm concerned about our offense. We lost 200-point players, and we've got to find a way to score.
You find it funny how once upon a time, Travis Green says he was concerned about the offense because they lost 2 100-point players. Do you ever think the Canucks are going to get 2 100-point players again in one season?
Yeah.
Is that a trick or treat?
That could be a treat. I don't think we're quite there yet, right? But
Pettersson, I could see getting 100 points.
Besser,
I don't know about Besser getting 100, though.
Maybe, like, combined. It might be a little less balanced than the Sedins were, but...
Yeah, I mean,
they're a good combo still.
So we're going to do a little something different here on Half Full, Half Empty. It's a trick-or-treat edition. Of course, Halloween just a few days away. Did you get your costume yet, Anna?
I actually hate Halloween, so
this
is the most I'll be participating in Halloween.
I think for Halloween is very polarizing for people. Quick off-the-rails discussion here. You either really love Halloween or you really hate it.
It's like Marmite.
I think I'm getting a little older and a little crankier, but I live here in Vancouver, actually, where fireworks are actually legal. You live in Vancouver as well. Uh-huh. In my neighborhood, I have people blowing off fireworks like yesterday night on the 26th of October.
Yeah, I know. Not because unless it was like a
save it for Halloween or something.
So where I grew up, Diwali was the big night for fireworks. So
okay.
Yeah, like anyone that wasn't from my area would be quite terrified. But for us, it was totally normal for Diwali, which that was Friday night. That was the Canucks did their Diwali celebration on Friday night.
I well played, by the way. The whole celebration, I thought that was a great performance.
I was there last year as well, and I really enjoyed that one.
I really enjoy the Diwali celebrations that they've been putting together on a year-over-year basis. But getting back to Halloween.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Got off the rails.
I cannot do Halloween mainly because of the fireworks. Like, I'm trying to sleep. It's 10:30 at night. I got dummies outside my apartment who are blowing off fireworks. I'm just like, keep it down. Like, you can do it on Halloween.
You're a cranky old
You're
man.
allowed to do it on Halloween, but like 5 days before, are you kidding me?
Yeah, no, I think that's a bit bizarre. Like, what do fireworks have to do with Halloween anyway?
These punk kids.
I think your kind of Halloween...
Adam's probably the one doing it, too.
Yeah. Your Halloween excitement takes a dip, right? And then it might resurge again if and when you have kids. But I'm sure Baby Force is going to dress up as something super cute. Yeah. So we'll look forward to those photos on Discord.
Yeah. So getting back to Half Full, Half Empty, it's a trick-or-treat edition. So what we're going to do here, we're going to discuss 5 takeaways from the first 10 games of the Vancouver Canucks regular season, and we're going to figure out if it's just a short-term result, i.e. a trick, or if it's going to be a continuing trend, a treat. So my first takeaway, Anna, and you can sort of agree if it's a trick or a treat, the Canucks are just playing out better at 5-on-5 than they were last year and seasons past. The Athletic pointing out the Vancouver Canucks for the first time since 2014-15, which is coincidentally the year they made the playoffs, Anna, they're generating more shots at 5-on-5 than their opponents. Mind you, it's at like 50.5%, but it's the first time they've cracked over 50% in terms of shot percentage than their opponents.
Right. I mean, 5-on-5 hockey is just hockey, right? Like
it is 5-on-5, but it is the like purest metric, if you will, to determine which team is better on any given evening.
Yeah. No, I understand, and that is encouraging, but isn't it worrying that we've just cracked 50? Like, the first time in 5 years.
I do think that this speaks to the volumes of the additions of JT Miller, of Tyler Myers, clearly helping the team get from that, 49% shot share to at least 50%.
Yeah. So I think, we've said it before, Miller's just fitting in like a glove to this team and really boosting the players around him as well. So I think that has a lot to do with it, but I don't see him slowing down, and I think the fact that he's making other players better means that it should continue. So
I ask you then, if the Vancouver Canucks are currently generating 50.5%, I think, at 5-on-5 in terms of shot share compared to their opponents, is that a trick or a treat in your mind?
Let's go with treat. I'm being positive.
All right.
Look at this.
Number 2, the Vancouver Canucks special teams are playing awesome. The power play is cooking. Quinn Hughes has been moved to power play 1, which will be part of number 3. Their penalty kill has also been pretty good as well. Tim Schaller, penalty killing machine Tim Schaller, scoring shorthanded goals all over the place. Is that a trick or a treat?
I feel like there's 2 questions, though. Mm-hmm. Penalty killing, I think that unit is solid, and I think they're going to keep playing that way. That's a treat. The power play, I'm a little more wary on that one. Maybe you want to call that a trick. Not because I don't believe in the power of Hughes. Obviously, I do. And if he keeps playing on the first unit, which with Green is not a guarantee, right? Mm-hmm. But the second unit, it's not generating as much.
Big leftover unit, right?
The leftovers, yeah. So I'm more inclined to call that one a trick.
I will say, though, just to...
Do I have to just pick one for...
Yes,
both?
just pick one. Overall, is it more of a trick or a treat?
Okay, marginally treat, but it's definitely closer.
Just keep sitting on that fence, Anna.
Yeah.
To your point, I will agree. The first unit with it in its current shape and form, which has Quinn Hughes on it and Pettersson and Besser, as well as JT Miller in front and Horvat playing that bumper role, it is clearly a stacked PP1 unit. Mm-hmm. I think more often than not, that power play unit with those 5 specific players gives them the best chance to score on the power play. I agree with you that whatever's left on power play 2 leaves a whole lot to be desired on the table. If you're not scoring with PP1, chances are you're not scoring on power play 2.
Yeah.
On the penalty killing front, I think it's actually due for a little bit more of a regression. They've been very good, but I think actually they've had a bit of a soft schedule in terms of their opponents. I think that penalty killing unit is due to regress just a little bit, but I think that the power play unit actually rises above than what it's been over the last few seasons.
Okay, yeah, I'll be a little clearer here and say, yes, I think a treat overall rather than a trick. My one caveat would be that a good playoff team is firing on both units and firing on both units consistently. So definitely in terms of the Canucks, I see an upward trend, but unit needs to improve a lot.
All right. We move on to takeaway number 3 for the first 10 games of the season, Anna, and it's my guy, my number 1, Quinn Hughes on PP1. Is he a Calder Trophy candidate? Notice how he said Calder Trophy candidate.
Yeah, because you like being odd like that.
Very quickly before you answer that question, I'll just rattle off a couple of the big notables in terms of rookie scoring at the moment. Buffalo's Victor Olofsson has 10 points in 12 games. Toronto's KHL Reclamation Project Ilya Mikheyev also with 10 and 13. Cale Makar 10 and 11. Quinn Hughes number 4 with 7 in 10. Jack Hughes, for those keeping score, not even on the top 20. Oh no, yeah, he is. Sorry, 5 points in 9 games.
Yeah, and I think
clearly the inferior Hughes.
Yeah, Jack's scoring has picked up a little tick recently. He had 2-goal game the other day, I believe.
No, just 1. That's okay.
Oh, okay.
A for effort.
Thanks. But yeah, so I think Hughes is definitely in the conversation. I don't know if I thought I'd be saying that. Mm-hmm. At the beginning of this season, I didn't think we had a second run at it. But yeah, Hughes definitely is in the conversation. I think Cale Makar would be a big
He's right
shout
up
for
there
me.
too, I think. I think we can't ignore what Victor Olofsson's doing so far in Buffalo. I don't know how much of that has staying power, but
yeah.
I do think the cream is going to rise to the surface a little bit as well with Capo Caco and Jack Hughes, though. I think those guys still have their best games ahead.
I was going to say, I think Rangers, who I have touted before the season as having a good year, they've had a bit of rough go of things. So maybe as performances around have improved, Capo Caco can really get going there. So I think we'll continue to have this conversation and see. But early on, Hughes is definitely...
So it's a treat.
Quinn
You're
Hughes.
buying it.
Yeah, I'm buying
the hype.
I'm drinking all the Kool-Aid.
There's a lot of treats being given out so far on the C4 podcast tonight, Anna. Takeaway number 4. The blue line is better. Jamie Benn, right? No, not Jamie Benn. It's Jordy Benn. Oh, my God. I knew I was going to do that.
Travis.
At least once this season, I knew I was going to do that. Jordy Benn has been a low-key, underrated addition who can help absorb some of those tough 5-on-5 minutes that he's been currently playing with Troy Stecher.
Okay, so I feel like you've tricked me with the wording of this because I would agree with what you're saying about Jordy Benn.
Okay.
I don't know if
Jordy, don't call me Jamie, yes?
Yeah. I don't know if I'm solidly buying that this blue line is a lot better overall.
Interesting. I would love to hear your argument as to why.
I think they've had a strong-ish start, but I think Markstrom's goaltending has papered over some of the cracks, as well as the defensive play of people like Pedersen, who will dig, and Bo Horvat, who will dig the team out of a hole. I'm not saying the blue line's been bad. I just think that we're starting to see the shortcomings of... That was a hard word to say.
I just saw a little scurry again.
Oh, no. So the hot box has a bit of a pest problem. Well, not the hot box.
This is not us. No. Let's clarify very quickly.
It's the library itself.
The Vivid Seats studio
No,
here.
No. It's nothing to do with Vivid Seats either. Can we just clarify? It's just the problem of being in downtown Vancouver.
We saw some 4-legged creatures scurrying around the bookshelves just now.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, pick up as you were.
Sure. What was I talking about?
Continue.
Yeah. Okay. I just think that it's the very beginnings, and I hope that I'm wrong on this, but I don't think that this D really does have the staying power. It's gotten a lot better. I think it's got a bit better. But I think in terms of value, Jordy Benn is kind of showing to be a great little low-cost pickup there.
He's a better Biega.
He's a better Biega, yeah. So I'm happy with his contribution so far. He's looked solid. I think we're starting to see that we're maybe not quite there yet with the team. We might need some playing around and figuring stuff out with these pairings too.
I'm just gonna err back on the side of positivity though, if you will, and I'll
positive Matt.
I'll give you 2 words: MDZ and Goodbranson.
Oh. Did you see that?
The reunion tour is happening in Anaheim right now, and that is who the Vancouver Canucks had in their top 6 at this time last season, Anna.
Yeah.
You can't tell me that right now what we've seen so far, despite the third period meltdown against the Washington Capitals, that this defense still is not leaps and bounds better. I actually think Tyler Myers has been pretty great through 10 games of the season so far.
I just think he's not as bad as we were worried he was going to be.
Maybe. This could be expectations being tempered. But, there was a couple shifts in that Washington game where Myers skated, almost from end to end, basically with the puck.
Yeah,
he's actually quite a deceptively good skater.
Yeah,
for a guy of that size,
yeah,
I think Tyler Myers skates phenomenally well. I think the real proof in the pudding with this blue line, Anna, is going to be what do we do when the injuries inevitably hit? We have seen in the past that this blue line is very prone to injuries. When one top 6 player goes down, I want to see how the rest of this blue line responds.
Yeah, and I said this earlier, right? This isn't necessarily directly in response to that Washington meltdown, because as I said, I don't think they could have done a ton better, and Markstrom has taken a lot of the responsibility, and there's some pretty bad puck luck in there as well. So I'm not just saying this about the Washington game. I just don't think that we're necessarily quite there yet with the defense.
I think I agree for the most part. If you ask me if it's trick or treat with the Canucks blue line, I think it's a bit of a trick at the moment, but I would like to see how they respond in the case of an injury to the top 6. The last big takeaway from the first 10 games of the season, Anna, the goaltending just seems to have arrived as a legitimate option for the Vancouver Canucks. Jacob Markstrom, up until that Washington third period meltdown, if you will, has looked phenomenal throughout the course of the regular season. Thatcher Demko has been great when called upon as well. What do you make of the goaltending so far?
I really don't want to fence it, but it's just so early to say with the goaltending because I think of the unusual circumstances of like Markstrom's forced absence, for example. So I don't think we've seen quite enough of him. He looks to be just as solid as he was last year. Yeah, even better. I think he was solid last year, but like he's stealing games again, so that's great to see. So I'd be inclined to say treat, but I think this one is the hardest to call in terms of not enough evidence, and we certainly haven't seen a lot of Demko, so it'll be great to see what he does tonight and hopefully puts out another solid start.
Okay, fair enough. It's been an interesting first 10 games of the season. I think that there have been some little takeaways. I also want to mention that, like, even though despite my positivity that we've seen so far, we've seen good teams from Vancouver in October before, and we have been fooled in the past. But you have to acknowledge, does this team feel a little bit different this year compared to the last couple seasons?
It's better. It definitely is, and I don't think that's just the whole October phenomenon. I do think it's a better team. I don't think that is a trick. But whether it's better, like good enough, it still remains to be seen. And obviously I'm doing that negative thing again, but I will say that I do think the progress is real.
Are we still talking playoffs?
We're always going to be having that conversation.
It will be the first of many, well, not the first, but it will be the second, third, fourth of many for the rest of the season, of course.
Yes, and I don't think we've done anything to move the needle either way too much.
6-3-1?
Like, in October.
Yeah.
So it's just that, like, we thought they were a bubble team.
Mm-hmm.
Fair. That's a fair assessment at the beginning of the season. So I think, yeah, still saying that, like...
Jury's still out in your mind.
Well, I just think they're still the same level that I thought they were. Like, they're better than last year. That's what I expected. I expected them to be better than last year. So I still think they're, like, gonna be rounding out that spot. But the positive I will say is the Pacific looks even weaker than normal. So, from that perspective, yeah, sure, it looks better.
Not just the Pacific, by the way. I think there is the bit of opportunity opening for the Vancouver. Like, look at the St. Louis Blues, Anna. They just lost Vladimir Tarasenko for the next 5 months with shoulder surgery. I mean, defending Stanley Cup champions, currently in a playoff position, a huge blow to the St. Louis Blues. It's there for the taking for the Vancouver Canucks.
Sure. But, I mean, that was St. Louis last year, right? They were down and out in January, so still a long way to go. But, yeah, it's definitely a good opportunity. Like when teams seem to be having off years, or teams like LA and Anaheim, they're like fading even faster than we thought. So, yeah, I think it's definitely, this season will be the best opportunity for a while for the Canucks to make it. Yeah,
I agree. We're going to take a break. When we come back, a couple more bits and bobs here with the F word coming up. All coming up next on the C4 podcast, CanucksHockeyBlog.com.
He liked to say the F word.
Oh, then get the here then. Okay, see ya.
Is going to have the F word on it.
I wish I could give you an explanation about it. I can't. You, out of here.
You said the F word, Dad.
You called me the F word.
A reminder that you can use the promo code OVERTIME in the Vivid Seats app to save up to $100 on all ticket purchases. So, Anna, a bit of weird rumors, if you will, happening over the last week or so. That Troy Stecher, reportedly unhappy in the Vancouver Canucks camp, playing third pairing minutes along with Jamie, don't call me Jamie, Jordy Ben. First of all, are you buying that there is any semblance of unhappiness on Troy Stecher's part?
I'm sure he isn't happy. Like, I wouldn't be happy with that deployment either. We know that Travis has been a bit suspect in that department. for sure. Definitely with the D deployment more than anything. But as to whether that's actually like real I want to move unhappiness, I doubt that. I just think Troy has been such a positive person that anything less than that might seem like unrest, and I don't think it's gotten that far yet.
I'm not buying it either, to be honest. And I've seen a couple people out there, friends who probably opinions they don't matter, but a couple people who sort of suggested that Troy Stecher today is what Ben Hutton was last year for the Vancouver Canucks, and it's just that he's getting pushed out by players better than him. I don't think that's the case here. I do think legitimately Troy Stecher is a very good defenseman for the Vancouver Canucks, a top 4 defenseman who's currently being asked to play bottom pairing minutes. Again, we talk about inevitable injuries. When they hit, Troy Stecher will have his number be called to play in a top 4 role. Yes, Troy Stecher would love to play more than 11 minutes a night. He would love to play 20 minutes a night. There were a couple spells last year where he was playing 20 plus minutes a night. I think any sort of frustration on Troy Stecher's part that he's not playing enough will soon be mitigated when those inevitable injuries strike.
Oh yeah, like let's be real. Chris Tanev is going to break his face at some point this season. Edler's going to go down with some kind of old man injury.
Chris Tanev's face is being held by super glue right now.
Yeah. Quick sidebar, like super quick off the rails, but you saw their Halloween costume?
What was Tanev wearing?
Tanev was Shrek, so it was weird because the costume had teeth where he does not.
Oh, very fitting, very fitting. That was probably accidentally on purpose.
Yeah, maybe.
Who was everybody else? I know Quinn Hughes and Thatcher Demko were both little piggies.
Yeah, for some reason there
was
two
Shrek
little
themed
piggies.
like fairy tale party kind of a thing.
2 little piggies, not 3.
I know
was Donkey.
Pedersen was Donkey. Yes.
And Vesa was Prince Charming.
I mean, that one speaks for itself.
Yeah.
I mean, it would have been anything. It would have been weird if he was anything but Prince Charming.
Yeah.
Who was everybody? Was there anyone else in there that I'm missing? I'm not good with fairy tales.
No, I can't remember. I think that was it. That's all I can remember. But yeah,
I know.
Cool.
I did see in a side photo. I think it was from Bo Horvat on Instagram. He dressed up as
oh yeah,
the guy from Grease. Yes,
Danny Zuko.
I never watched Grease. And
never watched Grease?
All right, let's quickly.
Okay, we need to clearly do a whole
C4 at the movies. Was there a Grease 2?
There was a Grease 2. I wouldn't watch it. Though.
Okay.
Like,
is it the equivalent of like?
I don't know, Mighty Ducks 1, 2, or 3?
Okay, don't you dare besmirch of the Mighty Ducks trilogy. Yeah, I know that he and Holly Horvat were dressing up as the 2 main characters from Grease.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very side note, by the way, did you see, I think this showed up on Canucks Reddit. There was a picture of Besser at said party, and he's holding a I think it was a Bud Light or a Budweiser in his hand.
Okay.
What do you make out of that, if anything? This is an opportunity.
Have terrible taste in beer.
Well, besides that, but like, what do you make out of? I'm not overreacting to this, but I think this is an opportunity where Canucks fans might overreact to it when younger players are drinking or spotted drinking at social events, if you will.
That's fine. He's of age.
I think so too.
They didn't have a game the next day.
Yep.
Totally
fine. You're okay with it.
Of course. Like, people drink. It's Halloween.
I only bring this up because I've heard anecdotal stories. I think it was from Ed Jovanovski recently on Canucks Radio. He talked about how the Canucks would go out for drinks and the Sedins were the ones who quietly asked for a glass of milk.
Yeah, but the Sedins, like, didn't give themselves ice cream if they didn't win. Like, Sedins were they're like a different species. So I don't think anyone's that perfect.
All right, fair enough. I mean, the Sedins, of course, were poster boys for like athleticism and professionals and stuff like that, I guess. So
yeah, I don't think it's
comparing apples and oranges, if you will. So
also, it's Bud Light, like
not a good one.
Not a good one. Also, you're not gonna get.
By the way, did you get a load out of Beardy Canuck here on Discord? He said he's bringing the good Calgary beer.
Like we aren't the actual like craft beer capital.
Get a load of this guy,
Jesus.
Am I right? Anyway, we'll move on. So Troy Stecher, you're not making a big deal out of that one as well. Very quickly on Jacob Markstrom, and again, up until that Washington game, had been sparkling fantastic so far for the Vancouver Canucks this season. And yet Chris Golden's big voice is looming in my head with what to do between the pipes when it comes to expansion coming up, Anna. And it's that Jacob Markstrom is an impending UFA. Thatcher Demko would also be exposed to expansion as well. How do you solve this problem right now? You don't, I guess, is the big thing.
I guess that's the answer right now. I do think there isn't anything that's changed my mind that Demko is our goalie of the future. Markstrom seems to be still as solid as he was and is that goalie to shepherd him into that future. So I
don't know what that is.
I don't know if you guys can hear that noise, but it's kind of like a ship horn.
Yes. No, it's like blowing at a bottle.
Yeah, okay.
Anyway, continue.
Or a ship horn. So, yeah, I don't know if there is an easy solution to that. I would hope we re-sign Demko.
You mean Markstrom? We re-sign Markstrom.
Well, no. Well, I think Markstrom, they're still deciding on whether they... I think extending Markstrom would be the right call, but I don't know if they made that call yet. They made that decision.
I think we can both agree. Whichever of the two were ended up exposed and available to Seattle next year, both of them are very attractable options.
Attractive?
Attractive. English is not my first language.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm like, I'm hearing Chris's voice in my head, but it is, it's very tough to call about what to do with either goaltender when expansion inevitably comes to the Vancouver Canucks. This isn't going to be a situation where we're getting rid of Lucas Spiza and it's like we're thanking Las Vegas for doing it.
Yeah, that was a great moment.
The Canucks made out like bandits in that case.
Delivery.
This is not going to be a case where the Canucks are going to get so lucky this time, I think.
Yeah. But I think that's definitely something the Canucks have to face up to sooner or later, because I think I'm right in saying that Seattle get exactly the same deal as Vegas.
Yep.
So all the same rules will apply as it did back then. So
the answer is we have no answer at the moment, but it is something.
You can't really protect two goaltenders.
I know, and unless you have some sort of deal with Seattle where you say we'll give you this if you agree not to take one of our goaltenders, but that's a very complex trade that I don't know if Jim Benning has the mental capacity to stick handle.
Yeah. Yeah, nice turn of phrase there. I think you're right on that for sure. I'll just say that. I think if we do end up losing Markstrom, I think it will be a blow. Don't get me wrong, but I'm really hoping that we're in a better position with Demko by that point.
I will say that if the Vancouver Canucks are somehow out of playoff contention by the trade deadline, it would not shock me if the Vancouver Canucks move on from Jacob Markstrom at that point.
Yeah. Okay.
It is all situational, but if the Canucks are still in the playoff hunt by the trade deadline, I am inclined to think that they're going to end up holding on to Markstrom. But it is something that we need to put in the back of our minds. It's something that we need to be aware of. And again, I'm hearing those two words from Chris Golden, which is asset management.
Right.
So, anyway.
I just think they've, invested so much in maneuvering Demko to be that future goaltender.
Yep.
And as solid as Markstrom is, he's not going to last for years and years, right?
Anna, as we wrap things up here on the C4 podcast, how about you tell people where they can find the C4 podcast?
Right, so we've talked a lot about Discord. That's where all the hockey chat goes down. You can find that at bit.ly/C4 Discord, all caps. So that's bit.ly/C4 Discord, all caps. We're also on Twitter at the C4 Podcast. And that's me and Chris writing tweets. That's why they're smarter, because Matt's not allowed to get his hands on them. And we're on Facebook at facebook.com/C4 Podcast. And we have a website, and that's c4podcast.com. So all our episodes are on the website. They are also on wherever you get your podcast. They are on Spotify. They're on iTunes, or Apple Podcasts, I guess, because iTunes doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, I heard of that.
Yeah. But yeah, we're on there. We're on all the other major podcast platforms.
Well, any last words, Anna, before we wrap things up here in the C4 podcast?
No, I'm just curious to see what happens tonight with Demko getting the start and hoping not a repeat of Friday.
Right. Well, that'll wrap it up for us here in the C4 podcast, Anna. I am looking forward to what will be a very busy week for the Vancouver Canucks. I think they've got 4 games in the next 7 days, so it will be a busy stretch of games for the Canucks in the next little bit, starting in just minutes with the Vancouver Canucks taking on those Florida Panthers. Sean Montembeault getting the start for the Florida Panthers.
Who?
Exactly. just the next guy to shut out the Vancouver Canucks, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you for listening here on the C4 podcast. A special thank you to our listeners who are listening live right now in Discord, in Patreon chat. With all that said, we will be back next week with another episode. And all that said, we're out.